We are live. Olympians are pushing the limits like never before with cutting-edge biohacks. It's different this time, I think. At Paris 2024, you will find hypnosis sessions, ice bath rituals, compression boots, and mind games. Even the world's most famous Olympian, arguably, is getting in on the act. Today, how the world's best Olympians are getting an edge with mind and body. This is Biohacking News. Hello, welcome to Biohacking News. I'm Tony White, and before we go any further, please do like and subscribe. Going to go straight on and bring on today's guest. Over the past decade, there is one guest who's been on more than any other on this podcast, and it is my friend, well-known creative mind and performance coach, Dr. Stephen Simpson. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Tony, and it's absolutely such a thrill to be on your show again.
Well, it's so nice to have you. It's been far too long. And obviously, this is the first time you've been on since the big rebrand, the Biohacking News rebrand. Now, as many people sort of watch us as listen to us, and you've got on your little name tag there, Dr. Stephen Simpson, lizard trainer. What's that all about?
Well, I train lizards. It's quite simple, really. No, there's a bit more to it than that. You and I have been working in these kind of fields for about the same length of time. And we both had tremendous enthusiasm for what we're doing, and we're continually learning, and we still are. I feel I'm sitting in a pretty good place at the moment, because there comes a time when we were talking before the show. You said, there's a time when you find your voice, and that's it. But all the kind of stuff that I've learned, and there's hundreds of different things in there, it comes down to just a few things. And the reason why I decided to be a lizard trainer is because there's no shortage of lizards in the world. They live in beautiful places, and they're quite easy to train. And in fact, the reason why I like them is because they're just like human beings. You see, in our brains, at the bottom of our brain, we've evolved, through all these different stages. And there's a primitive part of our brain that some people call the reptilian brain, or even the lizard brain. And it's when I look at the way people react to stuff and the kind of scrapes they get into, and the elite performers, where they find success, they don't find it up here, in the conscious mind. They don't kind of, I know planning and preparation, all those things are very important. They are. But there's more, the ultimate performance comes from deeper. And a good way to find that is to make your lizard go to sleep on command. Because if you don't, lizards aren't very intelligent. They only want about a few things, but they'll fight for all of those things. And they'll fight inside your brain. And that's why people say, I just don't know what to do. I was freezing. I mean, I knew I should do one thing, but then for some strange reason, I did this other thing. And I was playing professional poker. And in 3 minutes, I lost what I'd normally win in a month or something.
Yeah.
Because they were reacting inappropriately, because they hadn't learned how to make their lizard go to sleep.
And actually, this is why you are uniquely placed to talk about some of the preparation strategies used by the top Olympians and athletes today, sportsmen and women and high achievers, because you've been in this area for so long and you've thought about this so much. And I always enjoy talking to you because I'm the opposite, and I need these reminders every once in a while. I'm very left-brained. I'm always thinking about trying to think of things logically.
Tony,
and I need you to get me back on the straight and narrow every once in a while.
Tony, I think this is the only thing that we argue about, because when you say you're very left brain, you're not. I'm sorry, that is not the Tony that I'm looking at. You have a wonderful creative right brain, and you're able to marry the two together.
Well, that is very kind of you.
Don't bring that up on a show again.
Okay. I will retire that phrase then. Now, Olympians are biohacking more than ever before. We've got hypnosis, cryotherapy, compression boots, and cupping. I sort of feel like this is the Olympics. This is the year where biohacking might be going mainstream. First topic then, hypnosis. Definitely a lot of sportsmen and women using hypnosis at this year's Olympics. We've picked out one example, that is Switzerland's Martin Duguid in the canoe slalom. He debuted at Tokyo 2020. He found success there, won silver and bronze at the 2020 Olympics, which was actually in 2021. And this time around, he's been using hypnosis to prepare his mind, trying to breathe calmly and focus on his performance, not others, which I love, because when it comes to things like canoe slalom and kayaking, you're not actually at the moment you're out there, you're competing on your own. And you might do your personal best, the best you've ever done. If you only get bronze and you expected to get gold, you shouldn't beat yourself up about it because you've still done the best you could possibly do. So what do you make of sportsmen and women using hypnosis? And part of the reason I'm asking is I know that you do this with sportsmen and women.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've said so many wise things in that little minute or whatever it was, because all of the elements of key performance are there. But to bring it back to specifically to hypnosis, you and I have trained in hypnosis. You and I have trained, I believe, in meditation. We both practice meditation, and hypnosis is an altered state of mind. Meditation is an altered state of mind. And I think that if we were going to wire people's brains up when they're meditating and also when they're practicing self-hypnosis or they're under hypnosis, we would find the same kind of brain patterns, the A waves and the other ones as well. So it's no surprise to me that that hypnosis is now more mainstream. And it should have been before, quite frankly, because we've known how effective it can be in elite performers, and yet there's this kind of mystery around it, or people don't want to admit that they're doing it. And as we know, some people call it the H word. So it's great that it's coming out there. And to me, there's nothing magical about hypnosis. Anybody can do hypnosis. Especially if they're trained. I mean, that helps for sure. But even if they're not, people do it naturally. It's a natural thing. The way we talk to each other, the way we communicate, the way we touch each other, the way we soothe each other, these all have hypnotic elements to them. So anything that connects us more deeply to our unconscious mind, rather than this stuff up at the front in the frontal cortex, all this stuff that does the thinking, the planning, the preparation, the worrying, the angst, etc. The more we can get away from that, and the more we can go into the quiet waters which lie deeper, then that's where, from what I see and the people I work with, that's where they find their best version of themselves, especially under pressure.
I mean, it's really interesting with the Olympics. I've had a lot of time to think about that over the last few days. I've watched quite a lot of the Olympics, fairly obsessively, actually. Stan, my son's loving it as well. So it's a good excuse to combine parenting with watching TV and watching sport, which we both seem to love. But, I mean, there is no greater pressure than the Olympics, because for so many of these Olympians, they've got one chance every 4 years. And most of the time they're playing to empty gymnastics halls or empty swimming halls. And we've all seen the video of the divers who belly flopped, or, there's the gymnasts who, they're utterly brilliant, but then they fall off the bars because something happened. And I actually heard the commentators say, very sloppy from the Chinese gymnast there. But I was thinking, probably not sloppy. It's just the pressure got too much. And then on the other side, I was amazed at how in Andy Murray's first match in his, last ever tournament, I mean, such pressure, saving 5 match points before going on to win. I mean, that is incredible mental strength just to hold it together in that moment. These are the moments where you really do need this stuff.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, the way and the way you describe it, I mean, you're absolutely right. Only happens once every 4 years. You may only have a few seconds. If it's 100 meters, you've probably got less than 10 seconds to do your stuff. 4 years preparation, and the other events you might have a few minutes, or some of them go longer. But it ain't going to come around for another 4 years. We know that. So when you think of it like that, there is huge pressure. And as a coach, I would just say, don't think like that.
Yeah,
because they're defining a great result as coming home with a medal, and preferably gold. But I suppose at a push, anybody would say any medal is good, and it is. You're one of the top 3 in the world. But if you move the position of the goalposts a little bit, I would say don't think about medals. Think about the reason you're really there. think about why you're one of the chosen people on this planet who is going to represent themselves and their country with other people like them. How many millions of people would want to be in your shoes? And let's just say, with injuries and everything else, this might be your only Olympics. So make the most of it. Enjoy the experience, and move your objective from winning a medal to doing your planning and preparation, sticking to your processes, and doing the best job you can at any given moment, knowing that the unexpected is always going to be thrown at you.
Yeah.
And I think you said much the same. You can't do better than what's in front of you on that day. And I was thinking about Brian Phelps, and he won the swimmer who won all these medals.
Yeah, Michael Phelps.
Michael Phelps. Yeah, sorry. And in the past, a few years ago, I was doing some researching because one of the principles of NLP that we're trained in is modeling excellence. So there's an excellent guy, and he went through every kind of what if scenario, with his coach. That's total preparation. So when you get into the pool and you know that you've dealt with everything you can do, it's up to, is your head in the right state and is your body in the right state? Even if a wolf jumped into a swimming pool and started swimming alongside him, my guess is he would have planned that somewhere and he'd ignored it and carried on. Probably still another world record. Maybe swimming even faster.
Yeah, we're going to get onto one of the world's most famous Olympians, possibly the most famous Olympian, Simone Biles, in just a couple of moments. But before that, on the theme of what we've just been talking about, I watched pretty much, it's so niche. I don't think I would do this apart from once every 4 years, but I watched the whole of the women's synchronized diving tournament on the first Saturday morning. And it's really interesting because, you were talking about sort of focusing on your processes. And when all the teams came out, and obviously they're pairs of teams, and this is the final, there was one team that seemed to be sort of so low key. I thought, are they nervous, or are they just, it was almost like they just got out of bed and they sort of seemed just quite chill. I wasn't sure what was going on, and that was the Chinese team. They turned out to be massively the best team and utterly brilliant and won the gold medal. And then conversely, coming into the final dive, Britain were in fourth and Australia were in third. I don't know if you noticed this, but the poor Australians, and there are plenty of chances for empathy in the Olympics, aren't they? But they step up, they do their sort of countdown, they say, ready? And the other one says, yes. And they say 3, 2, 1. And they do 2 or 3 bounces and then they dive into the pool. And one of the Australians completely lost her footing. And on her final bounce, she only had 1 foot on the plank and 1 foot sort of slipped off. And she sort of did what can only be described as a belly flop. And, obviously it looked like she tried to do a completely different dive, but actually she'd lost her footing. And that caused the British team to go into the bronze medal position and the Australians to move down to 6th or something like that. And you just think that is the pressure. And you and I obviously met on NLP training years ago, didn't we? NLP and hypnosis training, the NLP master practitioner, and then the trainer training. And one of the things I've always done when I've spoken to sportsmen and women is there's enough pressure walking out at the Olympics for the final of the synchronized diving. You don't need any more. You need to play it down. It's just another day. You don't need a tub thumping speech. You probably just need that Chinese attitude of walking out and saying, yeah, it's just another day, isn't it?
I agree with you. And I feel very sorry for that Australian lady, by the way. It's bad enough when you're on your own and you make a mistake like that, but when there's a team of two of you and you feel like you've let the other person down, I hope she has good people around her and rebuilds herself and comes back next time and does it.
Brutal. Yeah, there's been so many stories like that, and I'm full of empathy anyway. But you do always feel so bad for them, don't you? Because
definitely.
Yeah, really, really difficult. But just a final one on that. Obviously, you work with poker players quite a lot, and other sportsmen and women as well.
And other sports as well, yeah.
Yeah, but with the poker, there's so much pressure based around, firstly, the sort of trash talking, or not necessarily the trash talking, but the mind games, but then those tight decisions under pressure. Do you say a similar sort of thing to them as well?
I say the same to anybody, Tony. like I
Mm,
say, things have got easier for me now. I don't have to
mm,
worry about remembering, last week's script, because
yeah,
there's just a few points, and there are only a few, and if you can master those, then you're
yeah,
ready to go. So yeah,
yeah.
I definitely do talk to the poker players, and the first thing, and you see, most of my coaching is probably very counterintuitive, and a lot of coaches will be throwing their arms up in horror right now listening to this. I'm not saying that they're not doing it right. I'm sure they are, but I've got my own voice and I do things my way because I don't know any other way to do it, and it seems to work. So with my poker players, we don't talk about money. I mean, they'll want to talk to me about money, how much is the first prize for this and all the rest of it. I say, look, that kind of conversation is not going to get us anywhere. Let's go back to the purity of what you're doing, like the purity of what the athletes are doing in France, in Paris.
Mm,
You're doing it because you love what you're doing and you respect the game for what it is. You respect the rules, you respect the tradition, you respect those who've gone before you, all the rest of it. And
mm,
you don't judge yourself on how much money you make, because that's just an end product. And a number is just might have a series of noughts after it, but numbers are boring. We found numbers boring at school. They're even more boring in real life. But those
mm,
feelings that we get, the emotions that we get, that we associate with what we're doing well, those are way more powerful, way more important.
mm. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, Okay, let's move on to possibly the world's most famous Olympian then. Certainly Simone Biles is one of the biggest draws at the Olympics. She absolutely had the A-lists out in force, supporting her in the gymnastics. And she's been talking about some of the biohacks that she uses. She uses regular athletic massages and ice massages, ice baths as well, compression boots, Epsom salt baths. And she sees her athletic doctor every Friday for a check-in, which sounds great. I'd love to have an athletic doctor. And according to a recent editorial published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, the federations taking part in the Paris Games together requested more than 16,000 tons of ice. This is the ice bath games and the ice massage games as well. And Simone Biles is right in there. I sort of feel back in the day it was more cryotherapy. Now it's ice baths. What do you think, Steve? Are you taking ice baths? Is that a biohack you're on board with?
I'm pretty cool about this one, Tony. And you'll remember that when I was in Australia, I went to Synchronicity, the Olympic Village there, because Wim Hof was there. And I'd signed up for a day with him. And it was a fantastic day, which culminated in the famous ice bath. And I mean, that's just a matter of willpower. And we only had to jump in for 2 minutes, although it felt like 20 minutes. But I did it. I'm glad that I did. But you see what, and I know how popular it is, and I hate to go against these people who have
Yeah.
done all these things that I haven't done. But I'm coming as a doctor and somebody who knows a little bit about the physiology of the body. And to me, an ice bath goes against everything that you would not, everything that you should do after an athletic performance. Because if you've got a buildup of lactic acid in the body, which comes from um, um, it's to do with oxygen metabolism. You get into oxygen debt in the cells, so it's converted into lactic acid. You want to get rid of that as fast as possible. So why would you freeze the body down so that lactic acid is kind of staying in the same place? The principle of Chinese medicine is that where the blood flows, the energy will follow. So if I think that a hot bath, which we used to do in the old days, would be better than an ice bath. But
Right.
maybe there's something that I'm missing here.
Yeah.
But
There's certainly a
maybe,
mood element, isn't there?
sorry.
I mean, apart from the physiological elements, which is presumably why they have been requesting them at the games, there's a mood element. And I also, like you, have moved very much away from ice baths, which I think stress my body too much.
Yeah.
They really do. But what I love doing now is going for a swim in the sea.
Uh-huh.
I mean, right here in Portugal, well, because you lived in Portugal, it's never warm in the sea in Portugal, is it?
No.
But I went in today, for example, it's probably 16, 17. It's
Mhm.
cold enough that it's a shock and you immediately feel different, but not cold enough that it stresses the body. And of course, you're getting all the lovely sort of nutrients and benefits of getting in the sea as well, plus the grounding element of it too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you see, I think there is a bit of a movement away from the ice baths. I mean, there's a professor in, I think it's the University of Southampton or Portsmouth, at their environmental medicine unit, and he's published some stuff, and he says this exposure to cold, like you know, going in the sea, is a good thing, but it doesn't have to be 0 centigrade or 3 centigrade or something.
Right. Yeah.
And when you go into something that's very cold, morbid subject this, but apparently half the people who die from drowning, it happens in those first few seconds because they stop breathing. You know, there's this reflex that kicks in. And when we were training with Wim Hof, he explained this to us. And why it took us a day was because we had to be able to get round that and to carry on breathing. But this guy, from what I remember, he reckons that something like 12 or 13 degrees, you know, for 20 minutes is like perfect. Doesn't need to be longer than that. Doesn't need to be colder than that.
Right. Yeah.
And there's other benefits of, you mentioned going swimming in the sea in Portugal as well. I mean, yeah, that seems like a really good thing to do.
Yeah. Simone Biles is amazing, actually. She really is incredible. She had such an A-list. Who did she have? 7-time medalist, one of the most high-profile athletes at the Olympics. Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande, Tom Cruise, American Vogue editor-in-chief Anna Wintour, and Snoop Dogg were there in the crowd, as well as Australian film director Baz Luhrmann. She is definitely a real favourite of the A-list. And again, you know, I mean, she did something never before done before by a female gymnast, a move of such incredible complexity. I was watching it to prepare for this podcast just before we started speaking, and I couldn't even it was so complicated. I couldn't even tell you what it was called because it's such a complicated name. But, you know, that again is pure pressure and sort of keeping your calm under the glare of not only the world's media, but also Anna Wintour sitting in the stands along with Tom Cruise. And I wonder, when you're watching the Olympics, bearing in mind that you are a sort of high performance and elite performance coach, and I know that I'm always sort of looking for how the athletes deal with things mentally. Is that something you do a lot as well?
I do. I mean, whenever I'm watching anybody, frankly, on TV or in, you know, I always study that. I mean, I'm fascinated by how people react under pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember years ago, you figured out a way, because obviously we've been friends for a long time. Do you know what I'm going to say now?
No, but I know you're going to embarrass me, Tony, so get on with it.
You figured out a way it was county cricket, and you figured out a way to find out who was going to win county cricket matches. I don't know, was that mental game or was that just studying the scores or what?
Oh, no, that was pure statistics. I was quite good at statistics.
Yeah.
I used to put money on sports betting, and cricket was particularly good because there are like the last Test match, for example, the game goes up and down. There are so many swings, and the odds of a side winning or losing or drawing will be changing all the time. So, my approach was not very sophisticated. I just backed the outsider. And then when something happened and their odds came in, I would sell that and buy the other one and vice versa. I just flip-flopped. And it was, and I did the same with some other sports. And it was so successful that I think all of the major bookmakers in UK, maybe even Europe, they either banned me or they restricted my activities because I'm assuming
that is extraordinary. Okay, so it wasn't some sophisticated inside hypnosis mind game that you were noticing that some of the players were using. It was just the odds are going to swing one way and the other.
Most of the time I wasn't even watching the game. I was just looking at the numbers. No, it wasn't. That wasn't. But no, I mean, on the more serious side of my business, where the sports that I am involved with people, I will definitely be studying, how those people are conducting themselves. Are they giving anything away? Do I see any mental weakness there anyway? And of course, what are their strengths?
On the non-serious side again, I can't remember if I ever told you, but a friend of mine had a friend who retired from a job in the city and went and lived in the Bahamas. And all he needed for his job was a high-speed internet connection, because he decided that he could make a full-time living out of betting on sport. And then he moved to the Bahamas and he realized that he couldn't really make a very good living out of betting on sport. But there was one event that he could make loads of money on. And it was almost exactly the same thing as what you were doing, which is that he found the early rounds of X Factor. The person who was the favorite to win X Factor nearly always didn't win it. And that basically sustained his lifestyle in the Bahamas. He was laying the early leader. And then when the time came, closing it out.
Well, you see, this is a lesson of life. He went to the Bahamas to do something. It didn't work, but in it not working, he learned something else that did work. Whereas a person who stayed at home thinking, oh, that guy's a maniac, is still doing the same thing now that he was 5 years ago. So I think it's wonderful that people should experiment in different ways, because then you're opening yourself up to the world of unknown unknowns, of uncertainty.
Yeah. On that theme, without wishing to get too deep about it, we've obviously been moving house quite a lot recently because we chose Portugal, and when you move here, it's very hard to get a year-round rental. So we got a winter let, because in the summer everyone rents it out to holiday makers who are willing to pay a lot more money once they come here for summer. And we were packing up our flat last week, and we sort of said, "Oh, packing up a house again." But this is the life we've chosen, and it's not necessarily always the easiest. It's not safe and comfy sitting on the same settee on a Friday night, but ultimately it's so worth it. It's just that, you get outside your comfort zone on a regular basis. Yeah.
Agreed.
And you've obviously moved around so much that you know that as well. Now, just before we talk about our final Olympic story, you sent me a text message earlier on that was relevant to this discussion, and I know that it was worth bringing up. It was a wooden chair. I had no idea why you'd sent me an emoji of a wooden chair, but please tell me about it.
Okay, well, I'm going to enjoy telling you about it. I'm surprised you can't remember. Another synchronicity here. Do you remember when we did those podcasts during the London Olympics?
Do you know what? I don't know.
You do? Oh gosh, they were wonderful. And
I can't believe it. I mean, I know we would have done some, but I can't remember the specifics of them.
Okay, well, the Brits, as usual, we go in with high expectations, and after about 5 days, we'd hardly won a medal. And you said you were going to be talking about this on the show, and you asked me what I felt about it, and I said I said I still feel optimistic. I'm not pessimistic like the whole of the country is at the moment, because we've got to be like Corporal Jones in this whole TV program called Dad's Army. He would run around the place saying, "Don't panic, don't panic, don't panic," and yet he was doing all the panicking. I said we shouldn't panic, because we've got the best sports. In fact, starting tomorrow, I'm going to predict there's going to be a load of medals, because us Brits, this is where the seat comes in. Us Brits, we're good at sports where we can sit down. And I said tomorrow, we got the horse riding, the dressage and the event. We got the canoeing, we got the rowing, and the cycling, of course.
Yeah, we're good at that. Yeah.
We're good. As long as we're sitting down, we're champs, all of us.
Yeah. The canoeing and the kayaking is apparently the sport which you should do if you're worried about getting injured. You are the least likely to get injured doing, because some of these sports are so dangerous. I mean, equestrian, one of them, but you're just not going to get injured if you do a bit of canoeing or kayaking. You might fall out, but that's about it. You'll be fine. So yeah.
Okay. What about
very
these
good
things, or are they rubber rocks? When they do.
Surely they're rubber
anyway,
rocks.
Interesting fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, look, one more story then, and this is a really interesting one because it's compression boots. This is another biohack. Biohacking has become so mainstream in the Olympics now. Did you use the compression boots when you came to meet me at Soho Works in London? No. Okay.
No,
well, they had a complimentary pair that we could go, and sometimes we would go and do a bit of work. It was next to our office, and then we could just go and put these compression boots on. But anyway, loads of these swimmers and athletes are using them, including Jamie Zarkowski, who's been talking about it. She trains for 6 days a week for nearly 9 hours a day. Can you believe that? I mean, such a stressful training regimen, and she uses different tools to recover every night after practice and on her day off as well. She uses sauna and ice bath. So another one using the ice bath, stretching and a roller to loosen muscles each night before sleeping, massages and physical therapy, all of that sort of thing you'd expect. But then Normatec compression boots to reduce lactic acid. If anyone hasn't used these are so lovely. It's basically like the best massage you'll ever get. And they're called compression boots, but they go right the way up to the sort of top of the thigh, and they basically squeeze your legs really very tightly, and you can feel the sort of pulse going in your leg as it squeezes it at different stages of the leg. And you can do a 10 or 20-minute program, and then it releases and you feel all the blood rushing back in. And Alison, who used to work for me and still produces this podcast, loved them so much. We had them at the office where we used to work, that she bought, I mean, they're not that cheap, but she bought a pair for herself at home as well. It's really good. I'm not surprised that the swimmers are using these at the Olympics. And to be quite honest, it's a lot better than something like the Theragun, which a lot of people like. And I've got one of those here, but I don't think it's as good. It's another example, really, of sort of biohacking becoming more mainstream at the Olympics.
Yes. And in my previous life, I, amongst other things, I was a trauma surgeon. And when we had a major case of trauma, obviously, blood loss would be a big factor, and we had to do something about that. And we'd actually put people in something similar, pressure boots or pressure stockings, in a way of trying to conserve some of the blood. And then another story, again, in previous life, I was in the army for a short while. And on a very hot day, when you're wearing full uniform and you're on sentry duty, standing to attention outside Buckingham Palace or something like that, it's not unusual for people to faint, and not surprising either. And you're taught, I hope they don't teach this anymore, but they teach you how to stand absolutely still and just flex your calf muscles. Because again, going back to medicine and physiology, the calf muscles contain a lot of blood. And if you flex those, you're increasing the blood flow. So if you'll practice with these things, it makes sense physiologically to me that it's going to help people. Never tried them myself, but I'm tempted to now.
Yeah, they're really good. Well, I tell you what, because we've got a lovely little meetup planned for a few weeks' time, haven't we? And we're not going to be recording podcasts. We're just going to go for a nice walk. I'll see. I hopefully will be able to arrange us going and having a little go on them if you like. And it's quite nice because you can lie next to each other and chat to each other while you're doing it. So,
we'll get some strange looks, that's for sure.
Well, it's in a sort of facility and where we're not on the street. Yeah, we're not on the street.
I'm not
going to bring them along. Yeah. Although to be honest, my life is a series of strange looks these days. So it wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary. Yeah. Now, Steve, we haven't got you for too much longer. I want to ask you about our biohacking review today. And that is, you were going to talk about PEMF mats, weren't you? You've been trying these out, and you are a real sort of trailblazer when it comes to a lot of different biohacks. And you've been trying these out for a while. Perhaps you could review them for us and tell us what you think and tell us a bit about them.
Well, I have been interested in bioresonance therapy and things like that for probably nearly 40 years now. And during that, because I like the principle of bioresonance, it sounds very physiological, very biological, very natural. And I've spent a fortune on buying all of these various devices, and I've never felt sufficiently confident about any of them to carry on.
And just very quickly, what is bioresonance?
Well, bioresonance is an example would be the opera singer hitting a high note and the wine glass shatters. So everything in the, I'll make this simple, everything in the universe is a frequency, and two frequencies, and the law of nature is that things, they try and get into the same frequency. There's the experiment where you get a wooden beam and you put these clocks on with pendulums swinging. They're all swinging randomly. After 48 hours, they're all swinging at the same time. So, I think the body's a bit like that. And anyway, so the theory is that if you can put good frequencies into your body, good things are going to happen. The body's going to like it. But like I said, I've had some successes, but there again, I'm happy to say I have never really had any serious illnesses, so I haven't needed these things too much. But just 2 weeks ago, and I know 2 weeks is a short period of time, I was persuaded to try this mat. It's about a yard square, a meter square, and it's got the electrical wires in it or something, and you can dial in frequencies. And the reason why I was interested was because the guy who told me about it, he said you can use this in your pillow. You put a little pillowcase on it, you put your head on it, just for half an hour, and it's going to help you to sleep. Now, I'm great at going off to sleep, but I'm not very good at staying asleep. I quite often wake up at 3 or 4 with my head buzzing with stuff. So I thought, well, if it improves my sleep, then that, it's worth it just for that. Well, it has improved my sleep. But the other thing that happened about 3 days ago is that I got gout in my foot. Now, anybody who has gout will know how painful it is. It's agony, and it stops you sleeping. I mean, that's one of the worst things about it. So, I tried using this mat. I was using them anyway. Now, typically an attack of gout will last about a week, and it's a week out of your life. And you find the strongest painkillers you can persuade anybody to give to you. You're desperate for anything like that. This time lasted 24 hours, and it was nowhere near as bad as normal. Now, is that due to the mat? It's not impossible, because I wasn't doing anything else different. And PEMF, by the way, stands for pulsed electromagnetic therapy. Anybody can Google them. There's lots written about these things. So my early results have been very positive. So I'm going to carry on with this.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I remember you had those machines in your bedroom for a while. Are you still using those? And was that bioresonance, or was that something else?
And all of them have got some connection with bioresonance. It's interesting. The thing on my website that gets the most hits is my section on bioresonance by far.
Really?
And I read about myself, and people are saying, that I'm an expert in bioresonance. I certainly aren't. I mean, a law firm phoned me up, and they said, would I be an expert witness in a high court case going on this subject? And I thought about it. I mean, obviously it would be interesting to do something like that, but I thought no, because I'm not an expert. I wouldn't want to be introduced as an expert witness, because I'm not.
Wow.
So I still use some of them. I've got some little handheld gadgets that I still use. They're very good for pain, things like that. And but some of the bigger machines that you've seen now, I sold those. Don't use those anymore. Not because I thought they were a waste of time or money. It's just that I've moved on to other things.
Yeah. And I think this is the nature of biohacking, isn't it? That that ultimately you have to try and find a way to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And yet ultimately, that you believe in this sort of theory of bioresonance and connection and sort of shared energies, and you're trying to find out the best way to express that with anything that you can find. I certainly sort of feel that I know all the theories behind grounding, and sometimes I sort of wish that I felt it at a more conscious level when I sort of, because living near the beach now, I'm able to go and step onto the beach every day with bare feet. It's so lovely, But I do feel that even though I don't feel it that moment that my first step hits the sand, for example, I know that being in contact with the earth, there is something about my frequency that changes when I do that. And I try and do that as much as possible.
And that's all you need to know, really. I mean, I know all of us like to be analytical and all the rest of it, but
Steve, my conscious mind wants to explain it. I need a full explanation.
I know, and I'm quite sure that the people listening will want a full explanation, and I would actually as well. But I just recognize that there's so much that we don't know out there, and talking about our brain to start with. Most of our brain is beyond our conscious control, almost 99% of it, maybe, which is just as well. So we don't know what's going on deep down. We can get some hints, some little, gut instincts about things. But as long as things are working, don't start tampering with the washing machine.
Yeah. Well, couldn't have put it better myself. I really hope this has helped people listening. We've covered a lot of Olympic ground over the last 40 minutes or so, and some non-Olympic ground as well. But, these Olympians are using things like hypnosis, ice baths, cupping, getting out of their lizard brain, uh, and compression boots, and just sort of wanting it a little bit less. Steve, so nice to talk to you as usual. I will really look forward to our in-person catch-up when we'll hopefully do some compression boot therapy. Maybe we'll get some looks. Where can people find out more about what you do, about the bioresonance, which is the most visited part of your website, and also, of course, your show that goes out on Thursday evenings?
Well, the show that goes out is a relative. I think I've been doing it for 3 or 4 months now. We were talking about it earlier. I really love this. It's a 30-minute show, and it's called Zen and the Art of NLP. And as the title suggests, it's about a lot of Zen, because I'm a great believer in a Zen approach. And NLP, well, there's a load of rubbish in NLP, but there's some great things too. And you and I both know that. And so I try and bring out the greatness and put them together with a bit of Zen.
Yeah. Well, I would highly recommend some time in Dr. Steve's company for anyone listening to this. It's always relaxing and inspiring and enjoyable. Steve, so good to. So just remind me of the website one more time.
It's drstephensimpson.com.
Brilliant. Okay.
Stephen spelled with a PH.
Lovely. Steve, great to talk to you. And I have a feeling, because we've got our now traditional goal setting episode at the start of the year, just because it's biohacking news, we still got to do that one.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that.
We'll be speaking again in a few months' time as well. Really lovely to chat. Thank you very much to Dr. Stephen Simpson. Thank you for everybody watching on LinkedIn and YouTube and X, and listening as well. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks for watching and listening.